Hey, what's up, guys? So I'm gonna use this time to record and do a video chart breakdown for the upcoming week. And so I'm basically gonna outline this with the strategy that I'm using for the entire summit. If you have any questions at all, don't worry about it as much. Hopefully they'll be answered by the end of the summit. But basically just want to use these future chart breakdowns to give you an idea of how the strategy comes together and give you that deeper level insight that I've been talking about for the past few weeks. I'm also going to upload these videos all to YouTube just because I've been getting some requests to get away from Telegram posting. Um, and so I upload everything to Telegram um, via my computer. And so a lot of people don't have that on their computer. So it's just a little smaller to see. So hopefully YouTube helps. So basically, just want to start with the dollar index, and I'm going to start in the weekly time frame. And this is because if I start in the weekly time frame and I get an idea of where my weekly candle is going to go, it helps me develop my bias, right? First and foremost. And then secondly, it's going to allow me to really look for opportunities in alignment with that bias as the week goes on. And then I also start with the dollar index because if I can get a better understanding of whether the dollar is going up or down, it's going to frame my reference for every currency pair that I trade, right? So if I'm bullish with the dollar, then I'll be bullish with every currency pair where the US dollar is in the front, right? So if I'm bullish on dollar index, that means I'm going to be bullish on USD JPY. I'm going to be bullish on USD CAD, Canadian dollar, right? And then the opposite, I'm going to be bearish on any pair where the USD is secondary, right? So Euro USD, I'll be bearish on. AUD USD, bearish, right? NZD USD, bearish, right? So with that in mind, let's kind of break it down to the charts. So there's a couple of things that I want to note here. There was a liquidity pool. Right now, we're going to call sell side liquidity. I'm just going to say SSL. That was taken underneath these lows, right? And then, so what I'm noting for is I'm looking for an area of liquidity where it's going to be matched up with buyers. This first area is really what I'm looking at, these relative equal highs at this point right here. So what I'm looking for is price to come into this zone and probably tap that area. I was looking originally for like the consequent encroachment of these wicks, which is a concept that I'll talk about as well. But really, I'm looking for price to come to this buy side liquidity, relative equal highs, and at least hit this point here. And these are concepts, like I said, that I'll talk about over the course of the summit and what they actually mean. But giving you guys this deeper level context that you can reference even after the summit's over, kind of watching these chart breakdowns will definitely help. So um, right? So I saw this, this liquidity, the sell side liquidity get taken out here. So ideally, I'd like to see kind of like maybe a retest to a previous level, and we'll break it down to the 4 hour, 1 hour in a second. And then, continue to retest these highs. It's kind of what I'm thinking for the week to start off with. It might not go that high, but um, this is our overall target. This is what we're aiming for. And so this is what we're hoping to play out over the next week, couple weeks until this area of liquidity is taken. So I'm going to be bullish on the US dollar. If we break it down to the 4 hour time frame, there's a couple of things that I'm noticing here. The first one is going to be this area of liquidity here. Um, shape. Okay, cool. This area of liquidity here, right? And so we'll refer to this as an imbalance zone. The price is coming back into. The concept is going to be one that I'll talk about, called fair value gaps in the course, right? Or in the summit. But just know that this is a fair value gap and price is coming back into this, and it will eventually reject, right? So I want price to it's bouncing back and forth between two areas of liquidity right here and here. And so this is what I call an inverted fair value gap. So I'm just going to call it inverted fair value gap here. And you can see the price is rejected off of this zone multiple times. And I'm looking for a price to actually continue on with this bias. So not seeing anything, any area of liquidity where price might bounce down to. It could bounce as low as this inverted fair value gap again, but this is when we kind of break things down to the 4-hour time frame just to get a better understanding. And so we have an imbalance here that I want to see price trade back into on the 4-hour. So maybe somewhere in between here or here, I want price to retest. So just to get a little more exact with that prediction. So price to retest back into this fair value gap, take things a little bit higher, and go from there. So just keeping in mind, so framing out the week, I'm going to be bearish or bullish on USD index. So if I take a text, so overall bias, let me go back to the weekly, daily. Overall bias is going to be bullish this week on US index, just a dollar index. So keeping that in mind, right? So if our overall projections are going to be bear or bullish on USD, I'm just going to touch on Euro USD really quickly. And that means that overall we want to see the opposite take place, right? On any pair with the dollar index secondary. So we're going to be bearish on euro dollar. And so if we started the weekly time frame, just kind of making a clean chart, we can see a couple of things, right? So I'll talk about the concept of order blocks in the summit as well, right? And so we've seen price trade into this area, and we've been at this standstill for the last couple of days where price has been bouncing off this area of resistance, right? And so we also saw price come back into this imbalance zone here, right? And so what I want to see is price target these lows and continue to go a little bit further down. If I go down to the daily time frame, there's a couple of areas that I'm looking at quickly. These lows, these relative equal lows right here, right? And so I'm just going to make a note that says relative equal lows, right? And I'm going to note that there's sell side liquidity beneath these lows. So I'm really looking for an area where price might reach now that we've grabbed a higher time frame buy side liquidity, and we're going to be aiming for an area of sell side. So I want to see price potentially over the last couple of days, we've been in this consolidated range. Price went up, took out these buy stops above at 1.10400, right? And so we've seen price come in and take these out. And I want to see price continue to trade lower to here. So maybe start the week high by retesting this zone and continuing down and really going for sell stops beneath these lows. If I can find my tool, right? So I want to see price trade back up into here and then retest these lows. I'll be looking for price to take things a lot lower. This will be the target, these relative equal lows on the daily. But if I kind of go back up one time frame, yeah, I think that's what we're aiming for. I could see price going as low as this, but really just going to be bearish overall on the Euro USD, and really just aiming for this sell side liquidity sitting underneath these lows. So SSL is going to be sell side liquidity. BSL is going to be buy side liquidity. I will talk about all these concepts once again, day one of the summit. So if it doesn't make sense now, this is more for 3 weeks from now than it is for today. But just kind of giving you an outline of everything that I'm thinking about when I'm marking out my week, right? So then I'm going down to the 4-hour time frame, right? And so there's just kind of seeing what targets might line up with this. You know, I'm noticing again these lows here, these relative equal lows in this time frame as well. So that's my overall objective is going to be this down here. I'm looking at this overall low, which is that low on the daily. I might see price retrace back up into this zone, maybe take out liquidity again. It's already taken out the buy side liquidity sitting over these highs. So I don't see, there might not be a need to go back up here. We'll see when London hits. And so usually when I make these projections out on Sunday night, I want to see more market data so I can just confirm my bias going into Monday. And so usually I try not to trade on Mondays, Sunday nights going into Monday, just because it gives me the opportunity to see which way the weekly candle is forming. In the summit, we'll talk about this concept called power of three, right? And that kind of helps me determine how the week is going to form. So I usually want to see that market data on Sunday night going into Monday just to get a better understanding of where price is going to go, right? And so just know for now I'm aiming for the sell side liquidity on the underneath this low and this low, right? And so I'm going to be overall bearish on, if I go back to the week, but this week I'm going to be overall bearish on Euro, USD. And the last thing I wanted to touch on is going to be obviously the indexes, because this is going to be focusing more on the indexes. So NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, and the S&P 500, right? So let's go to the weekly time frame on NASDAQ. This is like probably my favorite pair to trade right now, to be completely honest. So just on a weekly time frame, we can see a couple of things. We've dug into this order block right here, right? So this area of resistance is kind of being, it's not being respected. And so, I have to think myself, and I have to think to myself, if I'm looking at the charts, right, the number one concept that I'll teach you day one is what liquidity is and how price moves from liquidity pool to liquidity pool. And so I'm always asking myself, number one, like, where is the area of liquidity that price is heading to? And there's a couple of things in this weekly time frame that kind of stick out to me, right? This imbalance here on the weekly time frame. Yo, where is my shape set? You would think I do this every day. I would know. Okay, cool. So this area of imbalances is very going to be something that I'm looking forward to, or potentially price hitting, only because there's some draws to liquidity in this area. Obviously, we have this imbalance and this fair value gap here. We also have these relative equal lows sitting right here. And so that's letting me know that there is a huge area of liquidity sitting here, right? But then there's also, the market is also baiting people to come back down to this zone and seeing this as support, right? So I want to see price trade back into this area just because uh, this level's been disrespected, or they're not respected. So ideally looking first at this sell side liquidity pool here, because this is the nearest low. So I'm looking to see here, right? I want to see price to trade to this low, but then I'm also thinking that this is the overall draw on liquidity. Oops. And this is going to be a fair value gap, a SIBI with relative equal lows. So I'll talk about, obviously, like I said, I keep saying that I'll talk about all these things day one. Actually, the first week of the summit, so you'll know what all these terms mean. But just know that, for now, and then hopefully for your future study, right? So I'm always looking for areas in the chart where price is going to flow to, from liquidity pool to liquidity pool. And the whole summit is going to be designed to teach you how to get to those areas of liquidity and how to trade those, right? So it all starts with the frame of reference in the weekly time frame. So this is our weekly target, right? And so if I think that we're going to be bearish, going down and going to this, our draw on liquidity here and here, so it's going to be sell side liquidity underneath these lows, then I'm just going to make this red. It's easier to see. Oops, visibility style, red. So if we think sell side liquidity is going to be sitting underneath these these lows and in this fair value gap, then most likely, I want to see price give us a reason to go higher. Give us a reason to retest highs, and we'll see what those highs could be on the lower time frames, and then start attacking these areas of sell side, right? So this first sell side, and then sell side liquidity pool here. So that's kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen. And as a result, that kind of lines up with our overall bias on dollar index, right? Because if we're bullish on the dollar, we're going to be bearish on stocks and indexes. So if I break this down to the daily time frame, again, you're starting to see this low. This is going to be the nearest draw on liquidity. This area here, there's also a very small inverted fair value gap here, which is where price rejected. So filling that imbalance. Still the same, a huge relative equal lows. You still see them on the daily time frame. Let me get rid of this. You can see those relative equal lows there and this fair value gap here. So I very well expect price to trade back into that gap. And so my whole frame of reference is going to be, bearish. So I'm going to be looking for bearish setups pretty much this entire week. I'm obviously not going to be trading this week because of the summit, but just kind of as things progress, you'll start to see how that plays out. If I go down to the 4-hour time frame, right? So same thing, looking for setups to come back into the zone. Yeah, and it could be as high as here. I'm just looking at these lows. I'm looking at these highs, I'm sorry, as areas of liquidity where price might come back to. So really just trying to get a better understanding of where price might move to. This relative equal high, these highs. There's a fair value gap here that price didn't fill in. So maybe as high as here. Just gonna note that 15,124. Let's just say that. So price retesting these lows and then, starting that secondary drop. S&P, I just want to touch on this really quickly. So very much the same very much the same thing here, right? So I'm looking for areas of liquidity for price to draw into. And so if you look at the weekly time frame, we've had a couple of things play out. This is the wrong one again. Where is this at? There we go. Okay, so going back to the weekly time frame again, very similar because we'll learn about correlation in class, but all indexes are usually correlated because they're going to be comprised of the same or similar stocks. So the market should be trending in the same direction for most pairs. If it doesn't, that's a clue that it might reverse. But so the first thing that I'm seeing on a weekly time frame, very similar to um, very similar to uh, the US 100 or the Nasdaq, is that price has already started to reject from these highs that were made a few weeks back prior. And so there's an imbalance and a fair value gap that's been sitting here. Price is already trading into this order block. If I break this down to the daily, just kind of want to get a better understanding of what's going on here. There's not a lot of context here. And so you can see that we've traded underneath this order block. We formed an up close candle, another order block here, and we've been trading underneath this, digging into this. But I honestly, just to kind of line up with my bias on the Nasdaq, I'm going to be bearish on this. We're starting to make those lower lows past this. So I'm going to be looking for price to continue to trade lower. And the reason for that is just the correlation between Nasdaq and S&P. I do see an imbalance here that I think price might flow into. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start things off higher and then continue this downtrend down. Right, start the week up here, maybe take out these previous highs, and we'll go down to like a 4 hour and hour time frame to see if there's any reasons as to why price might come back into this zone, and then start targeting these lows. So this low at 43.82, this low at 43 434 over the next few weeks, and really see if we can find a higher time frame target um underneath this low here. This very similar is the fair value gap. That's kind of the same as it is on there's another one down here. It's the same fair value gap that you see on the weekly time frame on the Nasdaq, right? So looking for price potentially to come back into this imbalance that was trading through. Also looking at this one down here as well. I think this one might be the more likely target because it hasn't been traded through. There's also a gap here. We know price likes to reprice down to those areas. So I'm going to be looking here as a first target, but really I think this is going to be the draw on liquidity on the weekly over the next few weeks. This is going to play out all over, like I said, a month at least of weeks. So, but as we get down to like this week, I'm looking more to target this fair value gap here. So I'm just going to make a note that says fair value gap, CIVI. And so my bias for this is also going to be very much bearish as well. So once we break below these lows and we start trending lower, I'm going to start looking for price to take out this lows for sell side liquidity. And this low for sell side liquidity. Now let's go down to the 4 hour time frame. Again, very similar. This is gonna be my overall target. These lows for sell side. I think I'm gonna start looking here, but I'm pretty much bearish on every index this week. I'm not gonna touch on US 30. I'm just gonna focus on those. But hopefully that kind of gives you an overall. So basically bearish on the dollar index. I'm sorry, bullish on the dollar index, which is going to lead me to be bearish on Euro USD or any other pair that has USD as the secondary. And the opposite end, obviously, any pair on USD that's primary, I'm going to be bullish on. And then bearish on indexes. So hopefully that helps. I'm going to go more in depth as the class progresses, but use these videos obviously as present study to see what's going on, but also future study to when the class and summit is over, you can come back to these videos and watch. So hopefully that helps. And if you have any questions, hit me in the chat. And yeah, get ready for the summit to start this week.